In this next episode of our Jerusalem from Genesis to Jesus series, we explore Jerusalem at the time of King Hezekiah and learn about the incredible archaeology that brings this Bible story to life. This is the city of Jerusalem. In the Bible, this city is recorded to have had many evil kings, and yet it has also truly known some very righteous kings. But the king of Jerusalem most reputed for his righteousness was undoubtedly King Hezekiah. In fact, according to the Bible, no king of Judah could be compared to him. Yet King Hezekiah's reign was not without its struggles. The threat of Assyrian invasion was imminent, and Jerusalem needed a miracle to survive. So I invite you to step back in time with me about 2,700 years to explore this exciting time in Jerusalem's history, to see the archaeology this incredible king left behind, and to get to know King Hezekiah, yet another royal ancestor of Jesus, and a king of Jerusalem whose virtuous reign can be an inspiration for us all. Chad, talk to us a little bit about the period of history during the reign of King Hezekiah. What kind of king was he?
Well, it seems like after Israel kind of came in and out of godly kings, not godly kings, a season of judgment and then a season of blessing, we find Hezekiah. He acted like David. He brought revival back to Israel. He was cutting down the statues and the idols and the Asherah poles as the scripture goes through. Of course, we're looking at scriptures mainly in the book of Kings, 2 Kings 18, 19, 20. It's the main text for his life. But he brings a sense of respect for God. He elevates the office of the priesthood again. He writes things in the temple as far as practices and sacrifices. And so we really had a revival of return to the Lord during his reign.
Now, Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah are contemporaries in Scripture. What was their relationship like?
Well, what we have in the history timeline is Hezekiah is the king of the southern tribes of Israel. Let's call it Judah, as the Bible refers it to. He's the king of Judah. But during his reign, the northern tribes, we're going to call that Israel or northern Israel, they were already sieged by Assyria. The Assyrian Empire came in, wiped them out, took them captive, took their people away, and substituted the Israelites and the Jewish people with other nations. That happened during Hezekiah's reign in the south. But at the same time, the Assyrians came back to him over and over, and they said, we're going to attack you also if you don't pay us tribute. So there was a time period where Hezekiah did pay tribute, and then there was a time period where he didn't. And when he didn't, they threatened him again. They threatened attack and annihilation. And so at this point, he became a little bit desperate. He was lacking in faith. He was fearful. And he calls for the prophet Isaiah, tell me what the Lord is saying. Tell me what I should do. And the prophet Isaiah said, as long as you stand firm in righteousness, if you will stay on the track you're on in terms of leading the country in revival, follow the word of the Lord, then the Lord says, this attack of the Assyrians will not come near you. It will not succeed. You will be victorious. And so the relationship between King Hezekiah and Isaiah was that of a king and a prophet, but it was also that of a king and a friend. It was an encouraging word that King Hezekiah needed at the time, but it really came from the Lord through Isaiah and then to Hezekiah.
The period of Jerusalem's history when Hezekiah was king and Isaiah was delivering his powerful prophecies is so fascinating to me. And what really makes this time in history exciting is all the archaeological discoveries that bring to life the biblical narrative. Incredibly, at the southern slope of the Temple Mount, archaeologists uncovered a royal bakery from the time of Hezekiah's reign, And in the bakery's ancient garbage pile, archaeologists unearthed the seal impression of King Hezekiah himself. Then, roughly 10 feet away from where Hezekiah's seal impression was located, yet another seal impression was discovered that likely belonged to the prophet Isaiah. There is just so much archaeology in Jerusalem to confirm Hezekiah's story in the Bible. So I met up with Isaac at the city of David and asked him to explain yet another mind-blowing, massive discovery directly related to King Hezekiah. Isaac,
Yes,
one
sir.
of the fun things that I love to do when I come here with groups is take those who are willing through Hezekiah's tunnel. Talk to me a little bit about this.
Amazing project built by King Hezekiah. But in order for us to understand better the whole story of Hezekiah's tunnel, let's talk for a few minutes about this map. Over here we have the map that shows the city of David. Over here in the map we can see the wall of the city of David.
Right.
So during Canaanite era, during the time of King David, the city is within these walls.
Right.
Condition number one for life is water.
Water.
No water, no life. In those days, the one and only source of water in Jerusalem was Gihon Spring.
Right.
Where is the Gihon Spring? Outside the city. You see where is the city wall? So the spring is outside the city. During the Canaanite era, what the Canaanites decided to do, they dug an underground tunnel from the city all the way to the spring. So they knew that in case of emergency, if enemies come and put the city under a siege, they don't need to come out in order to get to the water. They simply can use this underground Canaanite tunnel.
Okay.
Now, everything was good and perfect until 8th century BC. 8th century BC, the time of King Hezekiah. At that time, we learn about the Assyrians. 732 BC, Assyrians invaded from the north, occupied the kingdom of Israel, and they were on their way to Jerusalem. King Hezekiah said, this is too dangerous to leave this water outside the city.
Right.
Because when these Assyrians come here, sooner or later, they will find their source of water, and then they will put their army around this spring. We can survive with no water. So King Hezekiah decided to do two things. Number one, first of all, many people lived outside the wall. We talked about it earlier. So he put a newer wall around the outsiders, included everybody within new part of the city. And project number two, Hezekiah's tunnel, which means the king decided to dig an underground tunnel from Gihon Spring, which as we can see outside the city,
Right.
beneath the city of David. All of this is under the ground, to a big pool, which as we can see was within the city, Pool of Siloam. Now, the king was in a hurry, so he decided to employ two teams of workers. Team number one began to dig the tunnel from the spring under the city of David all the way towards the Pool of Siloam. Team number two, they did the opposite. They dug the end of Hezekiah's tunnel under the ground beneath city of David towards Gihon Spring. Amazingly, two teams met halfway.
How?
We don't know until today. And this is the most amazing thing. Jeff, we are talking about 8th century BC, 2,800 years ago. Can you imagine to yourself, all of the work of the carving was done by hands, chisels and hammers only. No heavy machinery, no computers, no sensors, no satellites, nothing. Now, this is so amazing because as we can clearly see here in the map, you see Hezekiah's tunnel is not one straight tunnel. It doesn't go in a straight line. In matter of fact, it goes in the shape of the letter S. How did they know how to meet halfway? We don't know. Another important thing is the length of this tunnel. Length of the tunnel 533 meters, which is equivalent to 1/3 of a mile. Plus, the tunnel goes in a slight slope. Gihon Spring, which is outside the city, is highest point of the tunnel.
Right.
End of the tunnel, which means the Pool of Siloam, this is the lowest point of the tunnel. So the king made the water to run from Gihon Spring, which is the highest point, down into the tunnel and then downhill in the power of gravity all the way to the other end of the tunnel, which means Pool of Siloam. Isn't this amazing?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And this is why they named the pool Siloam. Siloam in Hebrew is Shiloach, which in translation to English means to send.
Yes.
Because the king sent the water from the spring that was outside the city to the pool that was inside the city.
Fascinating.
And then he buried the Gihon spring under the ground. So this became to be under the ground. So since then, every time that the people in Jerusalem needed water, only place where they could find water was the pool that was inside the city.
Fascinating.
Then after we saw it on the map, let's go and see it in the reality.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
Don't go away. When we come back, I talk to Sondra Oster Baras of CFOIC Heartland and explore Hezekiah's amazing tunnel. I was a pastor for over 20 years before I first went to Israel, only to realize that I had been totally disconnected from the roots of my faith. Since then, I've been on a journey of discovery, and my faith has come alive in ways I never could have imagined. I'm Jeff Futers, Director of First Century Foundations, and I am excited to invite you on my journey to the foundations of our faith, to discover your part in a Bible story that isn't over yet. First Century Foundations exists to reconnect Christians to the foundations of Christianity. And we do this by creating Bible-based media focused on Israel and the Jewish roots of our faith. But we don't just reconnect you to Israel's history, we help you participate in what God is doing in Israel today by connecting you to over 70 incredible ministries in Israel who desperately need our support. Will you partner with us? Together, we'll explore Israel's significant past while doing our part to ensure that Israel has a bright future. So there comes a period of history in the city of Jerusalem where Hezekiah is the king and someone is coming. Sennacherib is working his way through Judea, conquering city after city after city. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, Hezekiah is a righteous king of Judea, and as you said, he's in a situation where Assyria has already, captured and exiled off the entire northern kingdom, and now they're coming out against Judea, and it looks like his fate is going to be the same fate as the northern kingdom, and already the Judean cities have been captured, and they're all really under the thumb of Assyria, all of them. They're paying homage and, heavy taxes and all that kind of stuff. And probably they rebel, they say, no, we're not doing this anymore. So which is why Sennacherib comes, and he's already destroyed all of these cities in Judea. So you get a sense of closing in on Jerusalem. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, at that period of time, archaeologists have found that there's a sudden swelling of the population in Jerusalem.
Right.
Which makes sense, because you have had all these refugees from the cities in Judea running to Jerusalem. And so that's really what's going on. And then they come to Jerusalem. And there's this fellow, Rav Shakeh, who's the general, okay? And he's standing outside the gates of Jerusalem, and he's mocking the city, mocking Hezekiah. And he's saying, yeah, you and your God, you think he's going to save you this time. Guess what, guys? Sennacherib's a little more powerful than your God. And that's, the nature thing. And one of the things I found a great part of that story, he's talking to them in Hebrew. And at that point, the people from the city, some of the leaders, the prophets or the priests or whatever, are calling out to him, and they say, do me a favor, can you please speak in Aramaic? he doesn't want the people sitting in the city to hear this mockery. He's yelling it out with his bullhorn, you know, so that everybody hears it, which of course he's doing it on purpose to weaken the resolve of the nation. Even if the king is stubborn and he thinks he can hold out, if his people are not willing to hold out, the king is not going to be able to do very much. So it's his purpose to try to demoralize the people themselves. So I think that interesting interchain is very good. But anyway, it looks hopeless. Hezekiah goes to Isaiah. He says, pray. What are we praying? And there's prayer and there's hope. But it's hope and prayer from such a hopeless situation.
Right.
And wake up the next morning and the whole Syrian army is dead. It's this incredible miracle that happens where they go from ultimate threat to, you know, ultimate salvation, which is amazing. But in Chronicles, we have a little bit more detail added in. And one of the details that's added in is the fact that in between the threat of Sennacherib and Rabshakeh coming, and Rabshakeh actually coming, there's a period of preparation where Hezekiah does some things. And one of the things he does is that he seems to want to block the waters that are accessible to the enemy outside the city and divert them into the city. Now, it's described in very bare bones kind of way in the Bible, but of course today with archaeology we have a much better understanding of what exactly he did in order to protect the water supply of the city and yet prevent the people outside the city of having that same access to the water.
Right. Why should they come and have lots of water, right?
Right,
That
right,
was
right.
kind of the saying. Now, we know that Sennacherib actually bragged about what happened. And he says, you know, I had Jerusalem hemmed in like a bird in a cage. But we also know the end of the story from the Bible.
Right.
And the army was destroyed without Hezekiah or his armies lifting a finger.
Right, right.
Amazing.
It's
Absolutely
amazing. And you know what? You know this a lot about all these ancient writings that have been discovered. They are very quick to shout out their victories. They never mention their defeats.
Right.
And one of the things that people have said, for example, about the Exodus from Egypt, you have people saying, well, there's nothing in any of the Egyptian writings that talks about the Exodus to Egypt. Well, of course they're not going to write about the Exodus of Egypt because they lost that one. And so you see that also here. They're bragging about getting, you know, that surrounding of Hezekiah, but they don't say anything about the end of the story.
Right.
But because why would they brag about that?
Exactly.
In the 8th century BC, under the rule of King Hezekiah, the city of Jerusalem experienced a miraculous victory. Even Sennacherib himself, when boasting of victories on his palace walls, confirms that he surrounded but did not conquer Jerusalem, adding to the abundant archaeology that proves the biblical record. But there is nothing quite like exploring the actual tunnel Hezekiah commissioned. Archaeology that verifies that Jerusalem had water and her enemies did not during this terrifying Assyrian siege.
So Isaac, we saw the map. I've been here before, I know what this is, but tell our viewers at home what we're looking at.
So this is the entrance to Hezekiah's tunnel. What we saw a few minutes ago in the map, so this is the entrance to Hezekiah's tunnel.
Right.
The water that you hear, this is the water that comes from Gihon spring. Gihon, in Hebrew Gihon, in translation to English means to burst. The water is bursting from the bottom of the earth.
Cool.
So let's go and see it.
All right, let's go.
Please follow us.
Going through Hezekiah's tunnel never ceases to amaze me, no matter how many times I take tour groups through it. The sound of the Gihon spring gushing and tourists making their way through this 2,700-year-old passage, where every chisel mark can be seen and felt, brings the Bible to life, especially when you arrive at the exact location where the workers met each other in the middle, because they left an incredible inscription there to commemorate that amazing moment in time.
Well, Isaac, we made it to the exit of Hezekiah's tunnel. Now, on the way through, something very important was found. I know this, but I want you to tell the viewers at home what it was.
Inside very important archaeological discovery. You remember that we said that when Hezekiah wanted to build a tunnel, he employed 2 teams of workers.
Right.
They met halfway.
Yeah.
In the meeting point, there was an inscription made by the workers, and that inscription is 2,800 years old. In ancient Hebrew, that inscription described how happy were the workers when they met together.
Amazing.
Now, that inscription was found here in the 19th century.
Right.
Now, in those days, we learn about some kids from the next door neighborhood. They were playing in the tunnel, and all of a sudden, they were the first ones who found this inscription. Later on, some others heard about that discovery, and some people came here and tried to chisel that inscription and to steal it. Unfortunately, when they chiseled it to separate it from the wall, it was broken. Oh. Mind you, 19th century AD, we are still talking about Ottomans era. When the Ottomans heard about the inscription that was found and stolen here, they started a very important investigation. They found the thieves. What did they do? They took the pieces of that inscription to the Archaeological Museum in Istanbul.
Okay.
So the inscription is in Istanbul until today. But I have some good news.
Okay.
Last year, 2022, the President of Israel went to Istanbul and he met with the President of Turkey. President of Turkey promised the President of Israel that very soon Turkey will return that inscription that was found in Hezekiah's tunnel back to Jerusalem. Hopefully, very soon, we will be able to see the original one in our National Museum, Israel Museum, here in Jerusalem.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Very good. Now, there's a pool of water here. This is not the Pool of Siloam that we talked about.
Correct.
Are you going to show us where it is?
Yes.
I've been there, but I want you to show our viewers.
And we will see something very interesting.
Okay.
Now, until 2004, by mistake, we believed that this is the Pool of Siloam. Today we know that we were wrong, because in 2004 we discovered the real Pool of Siloam, and recently, only a few months ago, we started some new excavations over there.
Yes. Let's go see.
Please.
Don't go away. When we come back, Isaac takes me to the Pool of Siloam, a pool that was critical during King Hezekiah's reign and was used by Jesus to heal a blind man 700 years later.
In response to the unimaginably evil and inhumane attack Hamas inflicted on the nation of Israel and the war such atrocities have made, First Century Foundations remains fully committed to standing with Israel and supporting her specific needs in this desperate hour. Our special Emergency Response for Israel War Fund is now in place with 100% of all donations going directly to providing food, water, supplies, and shelter for displaced families, trauma support and care for those who are grieving and have witnessed atrocities, toys for children in bomb shelters, and critical supplies and equipment desperately needed. Thanks to our key partners across the land of Israel, First Century Foundations will channel your donations directly to where Israel needs it most right now. Now is the time to show Israel you care. Now is the time to stand with Israel 100%. Please give generously.
It was so great to experience Hezekiah's tunnel again, and I was excited to revisit the Pool of Siloam, a location that is ever-changing as more and more is excavated.
Isaac, I have been coming here since 2006, since 2 years after the Pool of Siloam was discovered, at least this end of it. Last season on the show, season 11, I came here with my friend Richard, and we were able to stand down here and look at the stones and see the steps going down. But things are changing.
All the time.
So tell us, first of all, tell us about the pool in the time of Hezekiah. This is what we were talking about.
With pleasure. First of all, as we said, until 2004, by mistake, we believed that that section was Pool of Siloam, we know that we were wrong. Over here, since 2004, we found the stairs that lead into the original Pool of Siloam. So over here, we can see the original steps, and remember that the water to this pool came with Hezekiah's tunnel, where we have just been.
Right.
Now, what do we have here? Over here, we can see 3 sets of stairs. Over here, you can see the first set of the stairs that lead to a plaza. Now, on our left-hand side, the beginning of second set of stairs, which leads to another plaza, and further down, the beginning of third set of stairs, which goes all the way down to the original level of the floor. Now, you have been here before.
Many times.
But I believe that what you see here is something new, even to you.
Well, yes. When I came a few weeks ago, I was amazed that this was all opened up. I had read about it, but I'm excited to see what they're going to uncover here. What are we expecting them to find?
Great. Now, if you remember, until January of this year, 2023, all of the area that we see right in front of us was a very big garden. In the past over here, there was a fence.
Yes.
Now, between 2004 to January of this year, we could go only until the level of the stairs. We couldn't continue over there. That garden was a private garden. Thank God, January this year, 2023, the owners of the garden agreed to sell the garden. So since then, we began new excavations.
Amazing.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, thanks to the excavations that just started, now we have a better perspective about the size of the pool. Now we can really imagine and understand how huge was this pool.
Yeah.
Remember that the pool started here, and we believe that it continued all the way to the level of the road of today.
Wow.
Now, what we are hoping to find, we are hoping, of course, to find the original floor of this Pool of Siloam, and we believe that also on the other side, we will find a similar set of stairs like the ones that we see here.
Exactly.
So far, we discovered here lots of coins, pottery, pieces of glass, and all of this is dated back in time to the time of the second temple.
Yeah.
Because the pool was built during the time of Hezekiah, but it continued to serve the people of Jerusalem until the end of the time of the second temple in 70 AD. So a lot more to come.
So stay tuned, because this is what it's like to come to Israel. Every time we come, we find something new, and there is lots more to come here at the Pool of Siloam. You're going to want to come and check this out. I'm excited to see what we find. It has been so inspiring learning about King Hezekiah and exploring the archaeology that brings his Bible story to life. The city of Jerusalem has so much meaningful history that we can learn from. History that was very important to Jesus and his earliest followers as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please join me again next time, right here in God's holy city, as we continue our quest to discover Jerusalem from Genesis to Jesus.